Igor, a successful entrepreneur, feels as if he is awakening from a deep sleep. His body is aching and he feels weak. When he opens his eyes, he realizes that he is not in his bed, but is lying in a coffin at his own wake. Disoriented and speechless, he panics and anxious questions race through his mind. Where am I? Who put me here? Is this really a coffin? Oh my God. Then he hears familiar voices outside the coffin. Well, that's it. It's finally over, Lara declares triumphantly, rejoicing at the successful completion of her plan to get rid of her husband and take possession of his wealth. She adds, now we just need to follow our plan and we can enjoy life. After Lara's words, her lover responds with, yes, dear, your determination is astounding. You tried to kill him several times. I was sure he was going to die in that car accident you had on the bridge. Do you think anyone would suspect anything? Igor is tormented by his thoughts. How could she betray me like that? I put so much into our marriage, and this is my thanks. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I suspected she was cheating, but only Dmitri, my trusted friend, knew the state our marriage was in. I have to get in touch with Dmitri. I have to get out of this nightmare, decides Igor. Meanwhile, Lara, far from the grieving widow she tries to appear, feigns devastation. Vladimir, pretending to be a close family friend, embraces her, showing false sympathy. At this time, Igor recalls the many accidents of the last few months. The skewed staircase, the car that almost hit him during the night, the botched robbery. All these he used to consider accidents, but now he realizes that they were his wife's insidious schemes. Rethinking his marriage, Igor hears Lara's voice again. Fool. He never realized why I married him. It was all for revenge. His father had wronged me. When I found out that Igor was the son of that monster, I only wanted revenge, she passionately confesses. You knew about Igor's father before? Wonders Vladimir, unaware of her double motives. Lara, wanting to explain everything, replies. It was for both purposes. We'll wait until everyone leaves. Then we'll move the body to his hometown. People there will definitely sympathize since his mother's buried there too, she says, sensing the tension in the atmosphere. Laura's face expressed icy indifference, hiding a storm of rage and resentment that only intensified at the memory of past wrongs. Consumed by a thirst for revenge, she felt not an ounce of regret at the death of the man who had always treated her with kindness, even before their marriage. An impatient Lara could barely contain herself, wanting to leave this place as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Igor, trapped in the coffin, fought desperately for every breath, struggling to find a way out of this grim trap. A glimmer of hope appeared when he was able to slightly move the little finger on his right hand and the big toe. Despite the terrifying situation, he did not lose faith in salvation. God, help me get out of here, he prayed in the dark silence. After the funeral, Lara and Vladimir, devoid of sincere grief, followed the hearse carrying Igor's body to his hometown for burial. Before leaving, Lara made a touching scene in front of Dmitri, Igor's friend and business partner, stating that she wanted to reunite her husband with his late parents. Dmitri, I'm sure you understand. The right thing to do would be to bury Igor next to his mother, she pleaded, feigning sadness. Of course, Lara. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go with you. I have business to attend to. I'll contact you later. Right now, I can't focus on anything but mourning. I'll contact you as soon as I'm ready, he added as he quickly left, thinking about Lara's strange behavior. Let's get going, Lara said hurriedly, hiding her impatience, anticipating the soon-to-be inheritance. While Dmitri left, immersed in his thoughts, Lara and Vladimir did not linger in Igor's hometown after the 3-hour drive. Certain of his death, they had entrusted the burial to hired laborers and left before the funeral was over. The gravediggers, led by Sergei, were instructed to finish the work as quickly as possible under the pretext that the deceased had no loved ones left. Having received payment, they began to lower the coffin. Sergei, imbued with compassion for the man lying inside, quietly recited a prayer. As they worked, the sky, painted in gray tones, emphasized the gloomy atmosphere hanging over the cemetery. At that moment, Sergei stopped to pray for the soul left behind. Just then, his niece Tanya approached him, whose presence suddenly brightened the dreary atmosphere. Vanya, Sergei's faithful dog, barked joyfully at her appearance. Uncle, I thought I'd stop by since you're almost never home. Tanya greeted warmly, bringing light and warmth to the gloomy day. Sergei replied with a sparkle in his eyes. Ah, my dear, if people would stop leaving this world for just a little while, perhaps I could get some rest. His joke softened the atmosphere, and both of them laughed. Don't joke like that, Uncle. Tanya laughed, barely containing her laughter. When her mirth subsided, she looked around the quiet cemetery and pointed to a lone coffin. It's so peaceful today. I hardly met anyone on my way here. What about this coffin? She asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. Why is it unattended? She added, persistently inquiring. Sergei looked at the coffin and explained. Today was an unusual occasion. A red-haired woman came in with a man who looked like her assistant and a couple of somber-looking gentlemen in suits. They handed me the fee, said almost nothing, and disappeared as quickly as they had appeared, claiming that the deceased had no relatives. Tanya listened, her face becoming serious. It's really sad, Uncle, she said quietly. Her eyes reflected sincere compassion. At that moment, Vanya, catching the mood, started barking, as if trying to support the others. Immersed in her emotions, Tanya suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the coffin. Intrigued and a little alarmed, she moved closer to find out what it was, and Vanya barked louder and louder. Uncle, do you hear that? Something is moving there, she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. Really? Sergei, skeptical, came closer to listen. Listen for yourself, Uncle, Tanya insisted, not taking her attention away from the strange sounds inside. Inside the coffin, Igor, whom everyone thought was dead, realized he had been noticed and redoubled his efforts to attract attention. He banged on the lid and called weakly, but insistently for help. Without wasting time, Sergei and his assistants opened the coffin. To everyone's shock, Igor was alive inside. His movements were slow and his eyes wide with fear. Tanya rushed over to him, her heart squeezed with compassion when she saw the terror in his eyes. The group of people around him were barely aware of what was happening. Trying to calm him down, Tanya said softly, Please calm down. We are here to help you. Just breathe. Her voice was quiet but reassuring. Igor, despite his weakness, desperately wanted to keep his rescue a secret. Please don't tell anyone, he whispered. His breathing was shallow. She tried to bury me alive. She explained to the staff that Igor was her cousin, who had suddenly felt ill during the visit. His pale and emaciated appearance convinced the staff to admit him immediately, and Tanya used her familiarity with the medical team to assure that, despite her lack of credentials, she could be trusted. Igor was given emergency medical treatment. Severely dehydrated, he was hooked up to an IV and left under observation overnight. Tanya decided to stay close by, watching his restless sleep, full of cries for help. Her heart was bursting with pity, and as she wiped away her tears, she softly said, You must be scared, but you'll be okay. Fight this darkness. Your uncle and I will help you. We're there for you, and we'll keep your secret. Let us know if you need anything. Refreshed, Tanya returned to the ward and noticed Igor's young features. Thick eyebrows, short black hair, and pale skin that made his appearance attractive, though serious. He was quite tall, about 1.80 meters. Why would someone do this to you, young man? By the way, what's your name? I hope you can put this behind you one day, she muttered, though Igor continued to sleep, plagued by disturbing dreams. At dawn, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the hospital window, the room was silent. Tanya, who had fallen asleep on the couch next to Igor's bed, awoke to the peaceful atmosphere. Igor, waking up, muttered, as if not believing, Am I dead or am I really in the hospital? His gaze stopped on Tanya sleeping nearby, and the realization that he was indeed safe filled him with relief. Tears rolled down his face as he remembered his urgent need to contact Dmitri. Tanya, waking up, noticed his awakening and smiled. If she finds out I'm alive, I'll be in danger. Let her think I'm dead. I'll deal with it later. Please bury the coffin as if I were still inside. Tanya exchanged a glance with her uncle, her eyes searching for a clue as to what to do next. Sergei, realizing the gravity of the situation, gestured for everyone to stand back, assuring them that he would handle everything. He then proceeded to bury the empty coffin, maintaining the illusion of Igor's death. When everything was completed, Tanya took the barely alive Igor to the local hospital to give him emergency treatment. Upon arrival at the hospital, Tanya quickly came up with a plausible story. You're awake, she greeted warmly as she approached. How are you feeling? Can you move? Yes, I feel better. I can move, Igor replied. His honeyed eyes expressed deep gratitude. Thank you for saving my life. I still don't understand what they could have used to paralyze me like that. I don't even know how to thank you. My name is Igor, by the way. Tanya smiled back and introduced herself. And I'm Tanya. I think it was either a neuromuscular blocker or some kind of poison that robbed you of your mobility. But the important thing is that you're fine now, she reassured him. You seem to know a lot about it. Are you a doctor? Igor asked with interest. No, but I've always been attracted to medicine. Thought about it, but in the end I chose a different path, Tanya admitted with a slight sadness in her voice. Can I ask you a favor? Please call my trusted friend. Have him come here, Igor asked seriously. Sure. Do you remember his number? Tanya responded, ready to help. Yes, I've called him often. Let me dial the number for you and you talk. I'm too tired to explain everything myself, Tanya said, taking his phone and dialing the number. Dmitri, you need to come immediately. It's about Igor. She spoke into the receiver. He's alive. Dmitri's voice sounded harsh and worried. I'll be right there, he stated firmly. Hearing this, Igor felt a wave of relief come over him. He knew that Dmitri's loyalty was unwavering, and he could rely on him at this critical moment. Tanya looked at Igor with a concerned expression and asked, What are your next steps? What are you going to do now? Replied Igor. His voice was weak but full of determination. Do you want me to get someone else to sit with you? Tanya offered, her concern obvious. No, that won't be necessary. I just need to be alone for a while and rest until Dmitri gets here, Igor assured her, his thoughts still muddled. I'll go home quickly and come back. Are you sure you'll be okay? Tanya clarified, her concern sounding in every word. Yes, everything's going to be fine. Thank you so much for everything, Tanya, Igor said with a sincere, albeit weak smile, appreciating her help. Igor leaned back on the hospital bed, closed his eyes and took a deep, calming breath. In that quiet moment, he couldn't help but reflect on the surrealness of his awakening in his coffin less than 24 hours ago, when it seemed to him that his life had come to an end. Igor lay in his hospital bed, his mind bubbling with confusion and betrayal. How could Lara do this to me? He pondered, the pain intensified by not knowing her true intentions. The accusations of mistreatment, the rapid progression of their affair, all these thoughts mixed together, creating layers of doubt about everything Lara had ever said to him. It was as if their relationship had come out of nowhere and skyrocketed into a marriage that, in retrospect, seemed frighteningly fast. How could I have gotten so quickly, so deeply involved? He asked himself. From the beginning, Lara had approached him with ulterior motives, though he had been blind to the consequences at the time. When Igor first met Lara, she was working as a photo model for his company's brand. With her bright red hair and tall, slender figure, she was hard to miss. She always dressed to attract attention and often visited the office under the pretext of work, although Igor now realized that her motives were far from professional. Remembering his past, Igor chastised himself for his naivety. Lara skillfully played the role of a poor girl in distress, arousing his sympathy and gradually attracting him with her seeming vulnerability. As their relationship grew closer, she was quick to profess her love, sharing secrets that seemed designed to strengthen their bond. I can't believe I fell in love with you, she once confessed, as if surprised by her own feelings. You're human, and people fall in love, Igor replied, letting his own feelings catch up with the rapid pace Lara had set. If you knew my past, you'd understand why it's so hard for me to believe I fell in love with you, she said, shrouding herself in a veil of secrecy that now seemed more manipulation than sincerity to him. Lara's true motive became clear when she visited his company with her agent and ended up in Igor's office in his absence. While Dmitri explained the details of the business to her agent, Lara looked around the room. Her gaze stopped on a photograph that unexpectedly linked her past to the present. The picture showed Igor and his family, including his father, a man Lara despised. The realization hit her like a storm, causing a mixture of rage and calculation. "Oh, sorry," she said, feigning clumsiness as she dropped the photograph in a moment of shock. As Dmitri picked up the fallen photo, Lara stared at it intently. "Which one of these people owns this company?" she asked innocently. Yes, the one with the honey-colored eyes is Igor, and this is his father Boris, mother and brother, Dmitri explained, unwittingly confirming the identity of the man Lara had sworn vengeance against. This revelation became the basis for Lara's sinister plan against Igor, a plot driven by deep hatred rather than the love she had confessed to him. Igor, now realizing the depth of her deception, felt cold fear as he realized the web of lies and the perilous position from which he had barely escaped. It's amazing that such a young man runs such a big business, she remarked, trying to hide her dislike for Boris, Igor's father. Dmitri laughed, accustomed to the praise for Igor, unaware of Lara's ulterior motives. He didn't know that Lara, harboring a grudge against Boris, would soon formulate a plan. I'll charm Igor, marry him, and exact my revenge through him. Her gaze drifted away as she plotted her intrigue. When Igor entered the office, he greeted everyone warmly. Lara watched him closely, noting that he looked more like his mother than his father, and gave him a friendly smile. Dmitri quickly announced the agenda for the meeting and mentioned his upcoming conversation with Igor. After everyone had dispersed, Lara's thoughts were occupied with her vengeful plans. After randomly bumping into Igor a few times in the building, and then starting to date him, Lara spoke with skillful sadness about her life to elicit his sympathy. She talked about past hardships and her journey to life satisfaction. At one of these moments, determined to fully open up and bond with Igor, Lara shared something deeply personal. I have something important to tell you, she began, looking insistently into his eyes. I feel compelled to share it, Igor, concerned, replied. Are you sure? We're still getting to know each other, aren't we? Then he smiled, adding, You can trust me. Your secret will stay with me. It has to do with what I mentioned earlier, with my insecurities about love, Lara confessed, eager to fully capture his attention. She then shared a painful chapter from her past. 10 years ago, she dated a man much older than her. Their relationship had been surrounded by secrecy. When she found out he was married, she ended the relationship, but the man refused to let her go and began stalking her. One evening on a dimly lit street where she often walked, he followed her. He left her with an eerie threat that happiness would forever be out of her reach, and he would kill her if he saw her with another man. This traumatic experience caused Lara to develop a deep hatred of men, causing her to shut herself away at home for months after her mother's death, completely immersed in her grief. Over time, she moved in with her aunt and gradually began to rebuild her life, focusing on her modeling career, deliberately avoiding older men and working only with reliable agencies. I'm telling you this because you're the first man I've allowed myself to get close to since then, she admitted, her voice heavy with the weight of the past. Igor sensed the sincerity of her words and felt the need to support this budding relationship, realizing that her willingness to share such personal details was a sign of trust. Over time, their relationship deepened, and Igor noticed that Lara continued to experience anxiety in the presence of older men. He was supportive and suggested she see a therapist, but she was wary, worried about maintaining her privacy. As their relationship progressed, Lara began to visit Igor's home more often, and conversations about marriage became more frequent. Although outwardly Lara appeared to be healing, her motive remained the same: revenge with the ultimate goal of making Igor suffer. Despite her dark intentions, everything she told him was true. Igor, sincerely in love, proposed to Lara. The first few months of their marriage were quiet. Lara began to become more involved in the affairs of the company owned by Igor. However, tensions rose when Igor announced his father's return from abroad. Lara, alarmed by the news of his father's visit, tried to hide her anxiety, which Igor attributed to her traumatic past. To ease her concerns, he offered to put his parents up in a hotel due to lack of space, but Lara quickly dismissed the idea. Tragedy struck when Igor's father died in a car accident. While Igor was devastated, Lara was secretly relieved and used the fictional photo shoot as an excuse not to attend the funeral, expressing insincere condolences. When Igor returned after saying goodbye to his father, he noticed Lara's strange behavior, which was accompanied by nightmares in which she would wake up terrified, whispering, "He said he was going to kill me." Not understanding the true cause of her distress, Igor provided Lara with sedatives to help her sleep better. After his father's death, Lara's behavior changed dramatically. She became more aloof and aggressive, often returning home late after work and not showing Igor the same tenderness as before. Despite his attempts to talk and comfort her, she remained withdrawn, constantly postponing conversations, explaining her behavior by temporary difficulties. She made excuses about photo shoots in distant cities to justify her long absences, spending her days with Vladimir and sharing her revenge plans with him, seeing him as a willing accomplice in her schemes. "Just tell me what to do," Vladimir would say, eager to participate in anything Lara offered for the thrill and promise of money. As Lara grew more and more distant, Igor sensed a deepening rift, prompting him to contact her repeatedly. After a week, Lara returned home, determined to finally deal with the source of her nightmares, visions of Igor's father urging her to leave his son alone. "He will finally find peace," she remarked ominously, implying a deadly decision brewing in her dark thoughts. Despite her sinister intentions, Laura pretended to be normal upon her return, hugging Igor, hiding her true motives. She offered to order pizza and choose wine, portraying a return to their happier days. Igor, desperate for reconciliation, accepted her gestures, hoping that their relationship was getting better. Meanwhile, Laura dressed seductively and behaved flirtatiously, maintaining a semblance of normality while she prepared the wine. Igor sensed something amiss, but couldn't figure out exactly what it was, choosing instead to believe that Lara was really trying to fix their relationship. At her suggestion, he took a shower to freshen up while Lara slipped something into his drink. "I hope that's enough," she muttered as she sipped from her glass to keep up appearances. When Igor returned, fresh from his shower and unsuspecting, Lara served him the poison wine. Before he could take a sip, she leaned in for a kiss, a distraction to avoid the need for further affection once her plan was set in motion. Igor tried to strike up a conversation after he drank his wine, asking Lara how her day had been. Lara enthusiastically encouraged the conversation. "It was an amazing day, and the team was made up entirely of women," she lied, trying to convince him. Igor finished his glass, and Lara immediately filled it again, just as the doorbell rang with a pizza delivery. Igor insisted on picking it up himself. When he returned with the pizza, he began to feel a growing drowsiness and finally collapsed on the couch, resting his head on Lara's lap. "I hope you sleep forever, my love," Lara thought grimly, satisfied with the way things were shaping up. "Let's eat before the cheese hardens," she said, pretending as if everything was fine. "I thought you missed this. Us together," Igor muttered, his voice gradually quieting down until the effects of the drug became overpowering. "I feel dizzy. I haven't had a drink in a while," he added, losing his sense of reality. Soon he fell asleep in her lap, not realizing that he was not supposed to wake up again. In the hospital room, Igor regained consciousness and began to slowly put together a picture of what had happened. The last thing he remembered was being with Lara while under the influence of the poison wine. Her voice and vague, frightening images that now seemed like a dream surfaced in his mind. Dmitri burst into the room with tears in his eyes, seeing his friend alive but in such a state. "My God, what have they done to you?" he exclaimed, horrified at the thought that Igor might have been buried alive by mistake. "It's all right now," Igor calmly assured him, ready to tell him everything. "How are things going at the company?" he asked, shifting the conversation to practical matters. "You're presumed dead," Dmitri explained. "I spoke to a lawyer," he added, his voice shaking with emotion. Igor took the moment to put Dmitri in charge of the company, reminding him of the power of attorney he had prepared in case of emergencies. "What about Lara?" Dmitri asked, clearly concerned about her involvement in what had happened. "She'll get what she deserves," Igor stated firmly. "Use the power of attorney and take control. I made a will so that you would inherit the company if anything happened to me. My brother is out of the picture in Europe, and my mother lives with him." Dmitri, still emotionally distraught, agreed to take on this responsibility, though he continued to be bothered by the story that had led up to this. Igor told him everything, and Dmitri was moved to tears by his friend's betrayal and suffering. Dmitri promised to support the attempted murder investigation and was determined to gather evidence against Lara and Vladimir. As they were discussing them, Tanya entered the chamber. Her appearance brought a sense of hope. "She saved me," Dmitri said, introducing Tanya, whose persistence in the investigation had led to Igor's rescue. "You really do have incredible intuition," Dmitri praised Tanya, grateful for her key role in uncovering the truth. "I was just following the call of my heart, as you both were," said a faint voice from the hallway, accompanied by the laughter of her friends in response to her remark. "Don't worry, the truth always shines through like the sun. It can't be hidden forever." Her warm smile assured them of her support. "Where do you plan to stay?" Igor asked, showing interest in Dimitri's plans. "I'll stay at my place for now. He can stay with me," Tanya quickly interjected. Igor watched her with a slight smile, surprised by her determination, letting the moment develop before she left them, leaving the friends alone. Dmitri had decided to stay the night to help with the hospital expenses and support his friend. They talked for a long time that night, and Dmitri noticed Igor's reluctance to fall asleep. "Don't worry, I'm here. Nothing will happen. Just rest," he assured his friend, not realizing the depth of his anxiety. In the morning, Tanya came to the hospital to pick up Igor and invited Dmitri over for breakfast, showing him the way for future visits. Dmitri agreed, and they left the hospital together, where Sergei was already waiting for them, pleased to see Igor in good spirits. Dmitri supported Igor as if he needed help walking, reminding him that he had brought things for him, as Tanya had advised. "Have a seat. Tanya made eggs and bacon, and the coffee's quite fresh," Sergei suggested calmly. "And how are you feeling, young man?" He turned to Igor. "I'm fine, Mr. Sergei, though I haven't had time to thank you properly yet," Igor replied, his voice trembling with emotion. "There is no need for thanks. Life is an amazing and sacred gift that sometimes cannot be described in words. Just accept this new chance and always listen to your heart," Sergei shared his wisdom. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to visit the cemetery. Have a good day," he added, leaving shortly after. "Goodbye, Uncle, and don't forget our arrangement." Tanya kissed him on the forehead as he left. Sergei got up to leave, and Vanya went with him. Igor and Dmitri exchanged curious glances, which prompted Tanya to address their unspoken question. "Before you start asking, I'll satisfy your curiosity," she stated with a smile, though her expression soon turned serious as she thought about Igor's experience. "I asked him to scrutinize every coffin, and he has been doing so ever since," she added, referring to Igor's recent ordeal. Igor lowered his gaze, a flicker of sadness in his eyes as he expressed his gratitude to Tanya for her support. To change the subject to a lighter one, Dmitri asked about next steps. He mentioned his connections to the police officers who had once worked with his late father. "If I tell our story and emphasize my connection to Igor, I'm sure they'll help us," Tanya offered strategically. "I think if we call her and pretend we know everything, it might scare her into confessing. We could arrange a meeting with her, armed with cameras and voice recorders to document everything." "You seem to be good at this," Igor noted with a chuckle. "She told me something that probably only her companion at the coffin knows about, since I overheard their conversation," he added, seeing that as a tactical advantage. "What did she tell you?" Dmitri asked impatiently, leaning closer with Tanya. Igor recounted a disturbing secret that Lara had revealed to him, about how she had been mistreated by an older man 10 years ago. She had confessed it because of her affection for Igor. Igor told of Lara's fear of older men, especially those who resembled her father, which often gave her nightmares, especially after the death of her father, whose funeral she refused to go to. "If I meet her and tell her all this," he began. "And where can we meet her?" Tanya interrupted. "How about my boss's apartment?" Igor suggested. Suddenly, Dmitri changed the subject. "Shouldn't your mom be back from Europe soon?" Igor explained that his mother had decided to stay longer, preferring the company of his brother instead of being alone in her house. "Where is your mother's house located?" Tanya inquired. "About 100 kilometers from here," Igor replied. They spent considerable time refining their plan. Eventually, Dmitri left, promising to return with Tanya and his friend from the police to finalize the problem. In the meantime, Tanya discussed with Igor the possibility of taking some time off. "Let me show you your room," she offered softly. "Thank you," Igor replied, following her into a modestly furnished room with a neatly made bed, a closet to the left, and a desk by the window. Tanya offered to lay out his things, but he politely declined. Leaving him to rest, she retired to the kitchen. After 2 days, Igor became accustomed to Tanya's presence. She usually wore her hair gathered in a bundle and dressed simply, remaining always attentive and sensitive. Curious about her profession, Igor was about to ask, but Tanya, as if anticipating his question, invited him into the kitchen for coffee. I'm a psychologist, Igor. I took a few days off to support you. I'm sharing an office with a friend from university, and I've rescheduled my appointments for next week, she explained warmly. Her gaze was soft and caring. That's terrific. So you've switched from medicine to psychology? He asked with lively interest. Yes, but I had my reasons for doing so, she replied with a slight smile. And what are those reasons? Igor asked, insistently intrigued. I'll tell you about that another time, she replied confidently. Right now, I'm more interested in how you're really feeling. Her gaze became serious, reflecting professional concern. Igor admitted that he had been struggling with insomnia for the past few days, waking up every hour and feeling confused. He also felt persistent fatigue, headaches, and stomach pains. Igor, Tanya began, her voice soft but serious, what you're describing are common symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, which often follows severe trauma. You seem to be having flashbacks or nightmares, she explained with emphasis on the importance of her words. Exactly, he admitted, lowering his gaze. I can't even describe how overwhelming and frightening it all still is, he shared openly. Tanya moved closer and hugged him, assuring him that he was not alone and that she would support him in his recovery process, both mentally and physically. They stood in silence for a while, which was comforting, and Igor was in no hurry to break the embrace. Let's breathe together, she suggested, setting a slow and calm rhythm. Picture the faces of those you love. Think about the future and hold on to positive memories, she guided, helping him focus on the good. When they broke the embrace, Tanya's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for being a part of my life, she admitted, her voice sounding vulnerable. I've never felt so open, but protected at the same time. They hugged again. Igor found comfort in her warm presence, in the hopeful atmosphere that energized her. Tanya, I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small box and handing it to her. Tanya was surprised to open the box and see a diary and a pen. It's a diary, she explained with a warm smile. I want you to use it to express your feelings when you feel the need to find peace. Write about your days, your dreams, your sorrows. It's a way to let out what you have inside. Igor's laugh sounded a note of awkwardness. I never thought of keeping a diary, he admitted, but perhaps it could be a useful form of therapy. I'll try it, especially while you're around to guide me if you're comfortable sharing your thoughts. I'm here to support you. Tanya nodded confidently. At that moment, Dmitri called to report his progress. He was well on his way to realizing their plan. Tanya shared that she had cameras and a recording device that she usually used in therapy sessions, with the patient's consent, and that they could be useful now. She also shared her intention to approach Laura with understanding, recognizing that she might be going through her own traumas as well. Igor, though surprised at first, trusted Tanya's calm and thoughtful approach. I'm worried, but I trust the officer Dmitri is bringing in, she said. Let's go to my mom's house soon. I'm ready to put an end to this nightmare, Igor stated with determination in his voice. Arriving at the old house, Igor experienced a wave of pleasant memories. He asked Tanya to help ventilate the room by opening the windows and retrieve the key from the familiar hiding place under the flower pot. Tanya watched his peaceful expression with a smile. Are you sure you want Laura to know where this house is? Careful, Tanya asked. Yes, I want her to come here. I'm done with her. And once she's arrested, she won't be a threat anymore. Igor replied confidently. Tanya nodded, putting further questions aside. They determined the best places to set up cameras and recording devices. Soon, Dmitri arrived with a police officer. Igor explained their strategy in detail. The officer took the matter seriously and agreed to their plan, confident that the recordings would serve as convincing evidence. After making sure everything was in order, he assured Dmitri of his support and prepared for action. Dmitri shared even more disturbing news. Laura confronted him, demanding an explanation about her dealings with Igor. After learning that legal issues would delay her plans, she made a scene and even hired a lawyer, but discovered that Dmitri had power of attorney. She can't understand how I got that power. It's a good thing you signed it while you were in your right mind, Dmitri said with a note of anger, unaccustomed to him. She'll get what she deserves. Let's keep calm, Igor, Tanya reminded him gently. I'm ready when you are. Let's make that call, Igor said impatiently, eager to end this agonizing chapter. Yes, make the call. I want to see this crook brought to justice, he said firmly. Dmitri stayed close by to support him, while Tanya dialed Laura's number. After a few beeps, she answered. Tanya took a deep breath and spoke with deliberate restraint. Hi, Laura, it's Tanya. We need to meet to discuss how you buried your husband alive. Laura, came the reply. Her tone was anxiously calm. Silence hung on the phone as Tanya laid out the plan. I'll send you the address and we'll meet tomorrow at 5 p.m. If you don't show up, the police will find you and there will be no escape, she said firmly. To further implicate Laura, Tanya lied, saying she was demanding money to give the appearance of blackmail. Vladimir must come too, or your future together will be jeopardized, he said before hanging up. Dmitri relayed the details of the meeting to his police officer friend, who wrote down the license plate number of Laura's car and began to discreetly follow her. At the gas station, the officer watched Laura argue furiously with Vladimir. I hate this whole thing. Who is this fool who is threatening me? Laura resented. Hush, just fill up the tank and let's go. Vladimir tried to calm her down. Unaware of the surveillance, Laura and Vladimir set off to the address given. As they approached the seemingly abandoned house, Laura knocked on the door. Vladimir stood hesitantly behind her. Tanya let them inside where Igor and Dmitri were waiting in the shadows. The policeman, seeing them enter, took up a position behind the house. Are you Tanya? Laura said, more affirmatively than questioningly, entering the house. Yes, I am. And I can't say I'm glad to meet you, Tanya replied coldly. Her gaze was piercing. What do you want from me? How did you find out about me? Laura asked indignantly. Tanya, keeping her composure, simply said that she wanted to understand how Laura was able to poison her husband and bury him alive. Laura's face changed. She glanced nervously at Vladimir and then back at Tanya. How did you know that? She mumbled, changing her tone to victimized. I know everything, Laura. You were pregnant when you visited the orphanage 10 years ago, leaving the baby there at 9 months old. And decades later, you married Igor, seeking revenge because his father Boris mistreated you. It's time to come clean, Tanya insisted, revealing layers of Laura's past that even Igor didn't know about. The room tensed as Laura's countenance began to crack under the weight of Tanya's revelations. Laura's confession, filled with raw emotion, hung heavy in the room. But how could you know all this? You're crazy. Yes, his father mistreated me. That fool is dead now. And yes, I wanted revenge on Igor because of him. I hated Igor. I wanted him to suffer. I had to gain his trust by sharing secrets. But I never revealed who I really was. She confessed. Her voice sounded harsh as she paced the room nervously. As she moved, her held-back frustration poured out. She told how her life had been forever changed by her hatred of Igor's father, how her disgust for men like him had become unbearable. She talked about the child she had left behind, born out of a mistake, and how she could not bear the burden of motherhood. In Igor, she had found a vessel for her revenge, never having felt true love for him. Her words were punctuated by tears as she began to describe how she had forced Igor to take the poison, hoping he just wouldn't wake up. In her frenzy, she threw objects around. Her screams and yells were filled with unbridled anger. Vladimir stood nearby, stunned and afraid to intervene. Why so much violence, Laura? Did you feel satisfaction in trying to kill Igor? Did it bring any peace to your heart? Tanya asked. Her voice sounded soft in contrast to Laura's rage. This time, of course not. I feel dirty, Laura sobbed, recognizing the inner conflict. Igor never opposed me. He just went along with whatever I wanted. I don't even know how much he trusted me. She fell silent, hesitating. And how could you after the kindness he showed you? Tanya continued, encouraging her to speak further. Laura's aggressive outbursts were interspersed with moments of deep sadness, indicating her unstable state. She admitted that her actions haunted her in her dreams, but she couldn't muster any real remorse. In the midst of her chaos, she was revealing more than she intended, perhaps influenced by Tanya's professional approach to the crisis. I'm here to help you. I'm a psychologist, Tanya reminded her gently. A psychologist? That's great. You make me confess to a crime and say you want to help me, Laura replied sharply. Her indignation was obvious until she was about to leave. "Wait, don't leave. I want you to meet someone," Tanya insisted, holding Laura back from leaving. At that moment, Igor came out of the other room. Part of an elaborate plan. Laura froze. Her heart sank when she saw Igor alive. She collapsed into a chair, shock overwhelming her. The tension was broken by the appearance of a policeman from the kitchen, representing the force of the law. "Lara, you are under arrest for attempted murder," he announced. The reality that Igor had survived, the tangible proof of her failed plot, brought Lara to a standstill. Her shock was profound. The officer laid out the evidence of her crime. As Igor looked at her, his gaze was full of determination. "You will pay for everything you've done," Igor said firmly, shifting his gaze to Vladimir with an accusatory look. Before she was led out to the flashing lights of the police, Laura's gaze fell on Boris's picture. She screamed, her words full of venom. "You ruined my life. I hope you're in hell. I hate you. I hate you all." She was led away. Vladimir followed, seized by silent terror. Dmitri walked over to Igor, who looked shocked. His skin was pale. Dmitri's embrace brought comfort. Igor felt his stomach twist. Dizziness overpowered him. Tanya, always attentive, sat him down on the couch to rest. Dmitri expressed his concerns to Tanya. "I'm worried. He doesn't look ready to go back to normal." Tanya replied with a reassuring smile. "I'll take care of him, Dmitri. You have nothing to worry about." Igor, hearing this, added, "Haven't you heard? She said she was a psychologist." Dmitri was relieved to admit it. "Then he's in safe hands." Time passed, and under Tanya's care, Igor began to heal. They returned to Sergei's house, where Tanya conducted his therapy, focusing on the joys of the present and the future. Sergei grew closer, sharing stories that helped Igor cope with life's challenges. "I'm leaving, Uncle. I have a reading at the orphanage today," Tanya announced one day. "Can I come with you?" Igor asked, wanting to join a part of Tanya's world. "Of course. It would be great if you could come." "Are you sure you're ready?" Tanya clarified. "More than ready. I need to start getting back to life, and I want to start by going to the shelter with you," Igor said with a new confidence in his voice. Tanya led Igor to the orphanage and told him why this place was so important to her. She remembered how her mother had been adopted as an orphan by her Uncle Ben's mother at the age of 9. This home brought her so much joy, and later, when she married my father, she enjoyed volunteering here. Tanya explained, her voice full of nostalgia. "How did you recognize Lara?" Igor inquired. Tanya told me about a chance meeting. "It was the day I visited my uncle's grave. It means that I can no longer hide my feelings, because you are the most important part of my life, and I want to be a part of yours," Igor confessed with sincerity in his voice. "I never want to leave you," he added with a smile. "I think I hope to get a psychologist just for myself." "You're sweet, Igor, but you need to stop being so naive," Tanya replied cheerfully. "Why?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Yes," Tanya laughed, not hiding her joy. "I noticed that little box from the very beginning. You're not as nimble as you think you are." Their laughter filled the air, and in a burst of joy, Igor leaned over and kissed her passionately. They had discovered that they shared many common values, and now he looked forward to joining her in her volunteer work at the orphanage. This decision gave his life new meaning. Igor realized the importance of openness and inclusiveness, realizing that everyone has different challenges and that there are problems far greater than his own. Every time he crossed the threshold of the shelter, he left his ego at the door, finding incredible healing in the process. Tanya became a real guardian angel for him, opening new horizons and giving him happiness.